In this presentation, I want to talk about additive and subtractive solid modeling. Solid modeling is a type of 3D CAD process that represents the volume of an object, not just its lines and surfaces. You see two examples here on the screen. You have wireframe model and solid model. There is a difference between the two. A wireframe model does not give the viewer an idea of surface appearance, nor does it provide information regarding mass properties. Wireframes are not solid models, hence the name wireframe. It's really just like a shape that is formed by wires. Think of it like that. A solid model will show how an object's surfaces will appear and provides information on surface area, volume, and weight. It is a solid object. Solid CAD models are the result of additive and/or subtractive processes. All CAD solid modeling programs utilize additive and subtractive modeling methods to create virtual 3D objects. A three-dimensional object can be viewed as the combination of two or more simple forms. This is the additive method, and so we're going to use several types of shapes that are put together to create one shape. In the creation of real-world objects, this method is represented by construction processes such as welding, gluing, mechanical fastening, and joinery. Method 1 has you create the back part of this object. Looks almost kind of like a shoe, and then you would create the little cube on the front of that. You would add that to it. So this is you create the back part, and then you add the second little piece to it. And this is another same object, but just maybe created differently. So you would create the bottom part, looks like an L, and then you would create or add the rectangular part on the top. And then we have another method where you would create this object by creating little cubes and putting all of those together. So you're basically creating this solid object cube by cube. I would say method 3 is probably the least popular way to do things. Method 1 is probably the best to make this object. Every object is different, and so every approach may be different, and every person may approach the creation of an object in a different way. But it's good to know that there are different ways to make one object. Now let's look at an example of the additive method. So step 1 would have you create a portion of the part, the main part of the object that you want to create. It usually has a constant thickness or the main shape of the object. And then you would sketch that object, you would extrude that object to create the constant thickness of that main part. Then we would add the portion of the part with to the front of this main object that we've just created. We would apply a sketch plane to the front of this object, to the front face of this, and we would sketch and dimension the shape that we want to add to it, and then we would extrude that shape outward to create the shape that we want to make. So it's a combination of that main part and that little cube put together to make the shape that we're looking for. And then that's what the final part would look like. Subtractive methods. This is another method that we use. Additive adds, subtractive subtracts. So an object can be viewed as the remainder of a solid block that has had the geometry of one or more forms sequentially removed. In the creation of real-world objects, this method represents the milling, drilling, turning, or grinding and other manufacturing processes. So where additive, we were adding things by different methods, and in manufacturing they would use different methods to add something or create a piece to, or attach another piece to a main part. In this case, we're going to create a part and then we're going to take away from it. So think of it like this. You have an example here on the screen. Just take a moment to look at it. So you have a solid rectangle, and we slowly cut away from that solid and create the shape that you see on the top right. And then we have the same object that continues, and you just slowly cut away to make another object. Again, would someone take this many steps to create this one object? Probably not. but it helps you see that you can create a solid object and slowly cut away and make the part that you want to make. Now let's look at an example of the subtractive method. So first we would create the overall rectangular solid that this object is enclosed in, and an object that we can cut away from to create the object that we want to make. So we would start out by sketching the overall rectangle of this shape. We would extrude that. You would remove the material from the front face. So we would create a sketch on the front of this rectangle. And then we would extrude it, but we would use the cut option to extrude the part of the material that we want to cut away to create the final shape. And we would remove the unnecessary material by using that cut option in the top right hand corner. So we would create another sketch on the front of that object, draw the rectangle in the top right hand corner, and then we would extrude that and use the cut option to cut that material out to get the final shape that you see on the screen. Most objects can be modeled efficiently through the combination of both additive and subtractive methods. There is no right or wrong way to generate a solid model. However, the process that uses the least number of steps in the shortest amount of time is the most efficient way. But everyone has their way of creating different objects in CAD. There's no real wrong way unless the object is not created correctly. So here's an example of a combination of additive and subtractive methods to create the object that you see on the bottom, kind of the bottom right hand corner of the object that we've seen quite a bit in this course.